Hey everybody, it's Elizabeth from Silver Nest Homeschooling, mom of 4, homeschooling for 11 years, getting ready to graduate my first senior, which was very exciting. And I wanted to do a story time with you today. I had a conversation with a friend recently who's got a couple of younger kids, a couple older kids, and they're going through the homeschooling challenge of teaching your kids to read. And so when we started homeschooling, we actually put our son in a Christian school for 5 days a week, half days, because he was needing that balance. And I thought, perfect, these people are going to teach my kid to read. And thankfully, we had an amazing teacher that year. She was fantastic, became a friend, always encouraging me, always helping me out. But one thing I did not expect was how I was actually going to be the one sitting on the couch teaching my son to read, because we were required to do 20 minutes a day reading practice. And I was like, great, send me home what he needs to read. We'll just have him read it. What I was not anticipating was that wall of fear. All 4 of my kids fought this invisible wall of fear when it came to reading. For one thing, we're a reading household, so they found it a lot easier if somebody else read to them. Right? I like easy. They liked easy. Secondly, it was embarrassing. To read out loud, to hear someone hear your mistakes, the sounding out, all those things, it was embarrassing. And so while they could somewhat maybe get some of the words down, definitely could handle their homework, all 4 of them struggled with that actual process of reading. And so since I knew they didn't have dyslexia, we have family members who have that, I kind of took them in my mind mentally, grabbed them by the scruff of the neck and sort of pushed them through that wall of fear. I was like, we're going to do it. But I tried to make it fun, tried to make it exciting, and making him learn to read was one of the things that built my confidence into knowing that I could have my kids do hard things and actually learn. And that led to us actually homeschooling, because that was one of the things I was so concerned about, right? Can I get this child to read? That's a huge key. Reading and math. If you've been around, you know those are my basics, reading and math. And so obviously we do science, all the other things, but those are the 2 most important keys for us. So how did we do it? We started out with Explode the Code, which they're too old for now, so I don't have any copies to show you, but it's very basic. A, B, C is how it starts, even for the very beginning readers. Helps with your handwriting a little bit. Then it goes 1, and then 1. Usually it's like there's 2. There's 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Now, some people slow it down, and they do 1 all year. Sometimes they'll do 1 and 2. But what we chose to do is 3 pages a day, which our kids could easily handle. And we did book 1 and 1.5 that first year, after we left kindergarten and went into first grade. And that's how we stayed. We just did 2 books, and then we figured out that actually at that schedule they could do 3 books a year. And so I had other friends who did 1 page a day. That worked for them. What it is, it's hilarious. It's cheap. It works. It teaches phonics. It teaches all the basics for how to actually sit down and build words. Mat, bat. We're talking about the basics, right? So that was the program we used. It's not expensive. That was one of the big wins for me. It's because reading programs can be quite expensive. The second thing is it's hilarious. The kids are laughing so hard. The pictures are funny. They didn't hate it. It was interesting. They wanted to know what the next joke was going to be. It's school, but they thought it was really funny. The drawings are just hilarious. And then it's repetitive. So the kids are doing the exact same kinds of assignments, but it's like a rotation. So it's not every day. It's not the same thing every day, but it is in a system that they then begin to learn. Oh, today I'm going to be writing the words. Today I'm going to be doing this fun phonics where I'm going to try to find the first letter of the word. So it's just really nice in that, because the kids know what to expect, but it's not boring where it's just everyday busy work. And then, of course, we did have them practice reading. Now, if you have ever studied how the Jewish families taught their boys to read, was on the very first day of school, they would walk to school with their dad, and they would give them a slate covered with honey for them to lick off all that honey. And the goal was to teach them that learning is sweet. And I take this very seriously when it comes to reading. So yes, I bribe my children with sweet things to get them to read. And so we began with the books, right? So we used Bob books, which are very famous. They're very easy. And then I'm going to show you my other favorite secret thing that we used. But anytime they completed a book, at first I would start with, our kids didn't get a lot of sugar outside of this, so it was a big deal, but maybe for you, you have to find something different. Find the currency. Give them something they're excited about. So we started with a bag of fruit snacks. If you finish that book, I will give you a bag of fruit snacks. And then they worked their way up where I was like, okay, I'll give you one fruit snack, right? Because they were able to read so many Bob books by that point. I was giving out like 7-8 bags in a day. That's a bit much. So I was changing it a little bit. So they were still kind of getting the same amount. But that helped. And honestly, with a couple of the kids, for each page they read, right? It was overwhelming. Then we would give them another opportunity to get one fruit snack for each page. And then once they realized, oh, that's pretty much a bag of fruit snacks per book, yeah, that worked out really well for them. So that got them excited. That was a good currency for my kids. The other thing I did use, which I have a whole pile of them here, are Ant and Bee books. Now, I learned to read using these books as well. If you've never seen them before, they're British, they're older. I have a whole stack over here. I think there's 2, 4, 6, 10, 13 books that we have copies of. And this is how I taught my youngest to read. Okay, now the problem with the youngest is that she was discouraged. She saw all those big kids reading and she couldn't catch up with them. And she never thought she'd be able to catch up with them. Now she has. Now she could read them. But the way it works is you have the section that you read, all the black words the parent reads, and then they have an adventure, and then suddenly they'll come up on a word that the kids will learn. And here's the first example. So this was A. This one is all the alphabet. So A, and then it has all these things here, right? So they're going through. And this is B. Now all these words in red, in this case the letters in red, the kids say out loud. That's their job. You read all the black, they read all the red. It's even easier to see. Here we go. Jug. And I'll show you a picture of the jug. Now again, it's British, so it's a little bit fun. But then I'll go over, and these are the words that they've learned. And I will read in black, and you will read in red. And suddenly they're reading. They're reading, and they're not reading a little baby book. They're reading a book that's actually interesting to them because it's got so much information, and they're paying attention. And this one goes alphabetical. This is the original Ant and Bee. I found these online, obviously not in any local bookstore anymore, but Ant and Bee, count with me. She loved these so much, my sister felted her an Ant and Bee in a little cup because they live in a cup. They're best friends. And so, yeah, those are my secret weapon. Just love Ant and Bee, and they're so helpful because they do have that special ability for them to read along with you. Now, you start with the simple start, you know, with the first and the second and the third. They've got a counting one that helps them understand their numbers. But those were the things that we used. Now, again, you have to give yourself some grace, all right? You might not have done this before. Your kids have never done this before. This is new for them. So a lot of this is talking with them about character, endurance, trying hard, doing the right thing for a long time is going to equal results. But it's a little bit each day, right? So maybe 20 minutes. For us, 20 minutes was too much at the beginning. If they did their phonics book, their Explode the Code, and then they sat down to read with me, I was happy with 5 minutes at first, 10 minutes at first. And then how do we build them up into their more like buff, like, you know, actual reading on their own stuff? Well, again, the bribe, totally fine, fruit snacks. But the other thing I would do is if I wanted them to read a book and they weren't sure that they could handle the book, I would start the book if I knew that they could read it all themselves, but they were afraid, not the other way around. If I knew they could read it, I would start the book and then I would have to go do something and they'd have to wait for me to come back to read it to them, or they could read it on their own. I always chose a new book. They didn't know what happened. And suddenly they were reading on their own. I'll do the same thing with chapter books. Start the first chapter, even the first couple of pages. Let them taste it. Let them see if it's something they're interested in reading. In fact, the other day, I just read 5 or 6 first pages to one of my kids who was trying to pick a book she wanted to read for school. Turned out she didn't want any of them, but hey, she knew that after she heard the first page. Now, of course, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Of course, we shouldn't judge a book by its first page, but sometimes you can get an older, teenager, middle schooler, an idea of a book pretty simple if you can give them that bite-sized taste. But oftentimes, if they just got that little taste and they really wanted to finish it, they would often try to finish it on their own. The other thing is, if they're 5, 6, 7, still working on reading, but you're seeing progress, right? You take a break, don't get frustrated. They take a break, don't get frustrated. Stick to the schedule so they know what to expect, right? Okay, tomorrow we're going to try again. Tomorrow we're going to try again. Tomorrow we're going to try again. Repetition, small bite-sized pieces. But if you're getting to that point where you're like, 8, 9, or they flip a lot of letters, not a few letters, just a few, but man, they're flipping a lot of letters. They're flipping a lot of numbers. We've done this over and over again, and we're back to the basics, and I've tried all the tricks and stuff. It might be time just to consider that you're hitting 8, 9, 7, end of 7, and you've been consistent, and you're still seeing them no improvement, right? You're looking for improvement, not perfection, improvement. It might be time to try to test them for dyslexia, and that is not anything but an opportunity for them to receive every tool that they need. And their brains are so cool. Like, they're wired so cool. Like, all the people in our family that have dyslexia, they're so good at talking. They're so good at communicating because they have learned that they have words that are sometimes better than the written word. And all of them have overcome. All of them can read chapter books. A lot of them love audiobooks. They can get a lot of their information from audiobooks. This is a great season for that. There's a lot of audiobooks available now for different things, even textbooks, text to speech. There's all kinds of opportunity, but don't panic. Don't panic too early. And from all the things I've studied, all the things I've read, boys are a little bit more likely to take a little longer. So take a deep breath. But as long as you're staying consistent, as long as they're doing their school, and as long as you're getting through, you're going to be fine. The other thing I want to say about Explode the Code is book 7 and 8 jump to almost a completely different level. And there's a lot of people that don't use them to like 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that, or even beyond. Some people even equate it with like 1 and 2 is like grades 1, grade 2. If your child is reading successfully, you might not need a phonics program anymore. You might need a spelling program. But for us, we ended up doing all 8 for all the kids and all the half books as well. It was just a really good foundation. But my sister, as soon as her kids could read, she was good. They were done. They were good. And 2 of them used it successfully. One had dyslexia, one didn't. And the other one who had severe dyslexia, they actually came up with a whole bunch of other things. I hope to interview her someday on some tips and tricks for that. But yes, so anyway, that was my long, not short story time about encouraging you that you can do this. You can help your children learn to read. And if you haven't tried the fun ant and bee, there's so many ant and bees that I just... we began to use them as prizes. They showed up at Christmas. They showed up at birthdays. So yes, we love all the ant and bees. And I hope you have a great day. You're doing a great job. And let this new year be the most encouraging in your homeschool. If you're making progress, if your kids are growing, if they're learning something and you're learning something, that's a win. That's a win. All right. Thanks for stopping by.